Australian architecture enjoys a disproportionate presence on international city skylines, showcasing a uniquely Australian style of innovation and creativity. Sometimes an opportunity arises to actually evoke the Australian landscape in an international setting. The Australian Pavilion at the World Expo in Shanghai is one such example, a building designed by Marsh Architecture in Melbourne, which is expected to host 7 million visitors from around the world in 2010.
The inspiration from the pavilion is largely born by what people perceive of Australia. The common image that people have of Australia overseas is of Uluru and the red centre of Australia. So we've used that stereotypical image of what Australia is and abstracted it through the sculptural form of the Australian Pavilion. The visual impact of the pavilion is a two-part. It's the exterior, which relates to that red centre of Australia, but then once inside, the visual journey is a ramp of 160 metres long, which walks you through various aspects of Australian culture, and then finishes in a show for 1,000 people that lasts 8 minutes. Constructing anywhere overseas is an enormous challenge, and we were fortunate enough that we were teamed with Bovis Lend-Lease, an Australian firm operating in China, so we had an excellent relationship from the beginning with them, and it's been incredibly satisfying and we're very pleased with the end result. The visitor's experience, hopefully to us, would be quite an emotive one. There's the iconic image of Uluru that they take with them, but then there's also a context of contemporary sculpture such as Richard Serra and Clement Meadmore, both in the weathering steel material of the project and also the curvaceous plan, which is really best experienced by a walk around the pavilion. And then there's the educational experience as you pass through the exhibits. So you sort of approach it with your knowledge of what Australia is, you experience the building as an emotional object, and you leave the pavilion knowing more about Australia. The success of the pavilion was measured by people going to the pavilion. If people are walking past it, then it didn't succeed. So to see people so pleased to go there with queues that we really hadn't imagined before, stretching all the way around the building, which was really encouraging to see. So it's been wonderfully received from the Chinese people. I think that DFAT's extremely pleased with the end result. They've got a pavilion that stands out in the context of Expo, with other national pavilions, over 260 nations represented at Expo, and they've got a very clear expression and a recognisable pavilion, and it's recognisable as being Australian. The Australian Pavilion for me has been a career highlight, I would say. An incredibly interesting client, having a government client, working overseas, working in such an emerging culture as China, and it's one that I'll never forget. And being a New Zealander, I've also thought it's a little bit of a chance to give back to Australia, which is now my adopted country.